Welcome to CannaDiva Conversations, real talk and inspiring stories from women who are shaping the future of plant medicine. Brought to you by the CannaDiva, a community of women supporting women at every stage of their cannabis journey. I'm your host, Tanya Osborne. This week's guest, marketing and event specialist, social justice advocate, and founder of the National Cannabis Festival, Caroline Phillips. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, make sure that you're following so you never miss an episode. Thanks for joining us. Let's jump right in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for coming to CannaDiva Conversations. I'm super happy to have our next guest. I've known for a minute and really happy to have this cool conversation with her. Caroline Phillips of the National Cannabis Fest. Let's bring her on up. Hello, my friend.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm so excited to be here today with you.
Thank you. And thank you for saying yes, because I was like, let me ask my people if they want to come hang out with me for a little while and do a little chit chat.
Of course, anytime. This is a pleasure to take a break from emails and to-do lists to talk for a little bit. So this will
And there's a lot of to-dos and a lot of lists and a lot of emails, and it's just so many emails, Caroline.
It's really endless. But I guess we all have to get in touch with each other somehow.
Yes,
Yeah, it's a lot of emails.
Yes. So we've read your bio, but I'd love you to just share a little bit about who you are and all the awesome stuff you do.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder of the National Cannabis Festival, but I am also a human being who was raised in Washington, D.C. I went to high school here in the city, so my heart really does belong to the city. I left here and went to college down in North Carolina, and then ultimately returned to DC to do some post-grad studies at Howard and Georgetown. What I thought was going to be a little stopover back at home became a really long stopover as I found myself working for a lot of social issues. I worked on human rights issues for a long time, a lot of refugee and immigration issues, and I've also worked on local issues, including education here in the city. So I kind of stumbled backwards into cannabis advocacy through my history working on other special interest issues that matter to people here in my community and to people abroad. But I find that there's a lot of crossover in the work I used to do before and what I find myself doing today.
I love that. What do you think brought you to that advocacy work? Is your family in that, or you just felt called to it?
My dad has always worked in foreign policy, but in the way of helping vulnerable and struggling countries get on their feet and find ways to support themselves.
Okay.
And on the flip side, my mom has been a public school teacher my entire life. So I think through both of my parents, I had great examples of service and also service through their work. And that was really inspiring to me. And, I do find now that a lot of my work is sort of about that. It's about talking about our market, the new cannabis market, and finding new ways for people in our industry to earn revenue. And it's also about educating people. So I think that does pull on what I saw my parents doing growing up and what I hope I'm carrying forward a little bit today.
I love that. Oh, very cool. So you said that you did you go to college for this type of, what was your major in college?
I definitely was one of those young people who had no idea specifically what I wanted to do. So I just leaned into what I enjoyed doing. And for me, that has always been reading and writing. So I was an English major.
Okay.
But I think that probably the most important tool that I got in school was learning about persuasive writing. And I think a lot of people in the cannabis industry know about this. At a time where I didn't have any money to fund any of the work I wanted to do, I had to write some really persuasive letters. I had to put together really persuasive one-pagers. So, I got to pick up some of those skills, and I definitely feel like they show through in what
That is a big skill, because I will be honest with you, a writer I am not. And so like the rolling in of AI stuff for writing, I'm curious now how you feel about Shibit, as I call them, Chat GPT, um, writing. That's it's challenging.
It definitely, I think it's something for me that is very like innate, and it's something that very much flows out of me the way other skills that people have that I just can't possibly comprehend,
Okay.
exist.
Wow.
And as far as Chat GPT, I feel like I have a pretty good Chat GPT detector.
Do
I
you
think
really?
someone who does love the written word, I can sort of like sniff out some of the Chat GPT characteristics, but I also think it's a terrific tool. There are folks on my team for whom like the written word is not really like their favorite place.
Yes,
They need
yes,
a
yes.
bit of extra confidence organizing their thoughts. So
I
it's a
appreciate that.
tool.
I appreciate that, because I have a few writer friends, and I'm like, it just doesn't come easy to me.
Right.
How someone can just write. We have a woman in New York here. She's just a writer, and I'm like, girl, that's a special gift. So I appreciate that. So you come back from college, you're back in DC, and I also wonder if being in DC, being like the hub of all of that stuff of policy and politics and all that stuff, do you think that had any influence on your direction?
Absolutely. I always say that, first of all, DC doesn't get enough credit for the wonderful city that it is. And I'm not just saying that because I live here. But as someone growing up in DC, and as generally people living in DC, it's hard for us not to be aware of things
Right.
like Congress. It's hard for us not to be aware of the rhythms of the federal government. So I would say that the average resident of DC is a lot more knowledgeable or a lot more aware
Yes.
about the political comings and goings than people who don't live kind of in the middle of all of it.
Okay.
And I would be remiss not to give a shout out to the amazing federal workers, many of whom live in this city, but they are all across the United States. It's
Yes.
been a rough couple of weeks here seeing dedicated civil servants dealing with so much uncertainty. So shout out to our federal workers.
And you are literally eyes level to this.
Very
Wow.
much so. Yeah, this is my
Okay.
neighbors, this is my friends, it's people who have families to support. It's, human beings who want to do a good job to support.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't even think
A
about
weird
that.
2 weeks for sure, yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's just weird. So here comes the National Cannabis Fest. I need to know, did you like one day wake up and be like, I want to create a cannabis music festival that has all these features? Like, where did that come from?
I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity or an idea that's actually like irritated you enough that you've had to like hunt it down and make it happen. But when cannabis and the cannabis markets first started to be realized in DC, it came with a lot of very high priced events that were brought here by companies. I won't even say individuals, but by companies not from our area.
Okay.
I noticed that they were coming in, they were charging, $700 plus for tickets, promising you access. You remember this, like, 9, 10 years ago, access to the green rush and be in the room to meet the people that will make you a millionaire. And that just was kind of a strange thing to me because I was like, who can afford to go to these that isn't already a millionaire? Then I got hired by a company that wanted to produce an event in the city. And I was like, well, in event production, this will be interesting. Yeah. And I got to sort of see some of the ins and outs and what was missing from some of the cannabis events. And that's where I first started to get the itch for the National Cannabis Festival. I was like, it's really important that these events are actually accessible to our community members. It's really important that these events actually include our community members.
That part.
And it's really important that after this event, it's done something for the community.
I love that.
That's kind of where it started for me. These events were coming and going from DC and leaving nothing behind except for empty hotel ballrooms and a lot of kind of swag. But I know that there's a lot more to the cannabis conversation
Right.
on the East Coast still. We're all still sort of living in the war on drugs. So that's how
100%.
I started.
So I don't recall what year it started. What year was the first festival?
My first swing at the National Cannabis Festival was 2015, but I didn't actually end up making it happen until 2016. So April
Okay.
2016 was the first festival.
So I think I got there 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember because I've gone to music festivals, as a young person, even today. And I just looked around and I'm like, I don't know how the hell she did this. I don't know how she did this. This little person driving around in a golf cart. It just seemed so huge to me, like that concept, that thing that was burning in your head. Is this what you wanted? Like, because that was amazing to me.
I will say that in the past 2 years, 3 years, the most gratifying thing has been seeing the festival get a life of its own.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we have all of these programs that happen at the festival and all of these contests and all of these ways you can participate.
Yeah.
People have started to anticipate those things. And so they come to us with plans. Our exhibitors are more mature now as business owners and as exhibitors. They know how to set up. So I joke to my team that, it's our job to get the fence line put up, the stage, get the elements in place, make sure it's safe. Then we need to step back and let our community do what it does. And it's really started to work that way. And I think that's been my favorite thing over the years is that NCF is really becoming the community's event. It's less about
It really is. Because I know people from up here in New York City travel. They're like, oh, we're going to NCF. And I'm like, okay. And the headliners, like the music, I worked in the music industry for a minute, and you've had amazing headliners and all of the vendors. It's a fantastic event, and I know that there's another part of it is the policy part of it. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So along with the festival, we have our 420-week program, which is a series of all kinds of events around the DC area, hosted by different community members and different organizations. And it's capstoned by our policy summit. The policy is a free event. It's open to the public. And my vision behind it was really convening unlikely allies around cannabis policy.
Right.
And what I mean by that is I think that we've seen over the years that we can get certain speakers in certain settings.
Yes.
And I was finding that we were having very little success getting folks who were right of center Republicans to come and speak at the festival.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting to talk about this in the times that we're now living in, this idea of bipartisan cooperation and just the idea that we have this issue with cannabis that's popular with so many Americans that disagree on other things. And that's really where the Policy Summit was born. It's a space where people from all ends of the political spectrum can come together to talk about what they think is most important around our push towards better drug policy and a stronger cannabis market.
Amazing. How the pieces, right? You've got the policy piece, you've got the event itself. There's so many parts to the event.
Yes.
How big is your team? Like, how many people are working on this project with you?
I have a core team of about 5 very hardworking individuals. One of the great things about NCF is that we've managed to maintain our core team over 10 years. So there's a lot of institutions.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And a lot of familiarity with our community. And beyond that, we've gutted it through some really hard times together. So, there's a lot of trust on our team in that sense. And it's just an amazing team of people. So we really divide and conquer. I have somebody whose name is Molly, and she runs our education programs in the Policy Summit.
Okay.
I've been running our sponsor exhibitor program for 8 years now. Khaleesi has been running our epic food court and munchie zone for 10 years. Nisha has been running our VIP program for 10 years. So we just have like a really solid crew of people. And I think it really shows when you get to the festival program. We just have a great team. And yeah, shout out.
So if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of stay there for a minute.
Yeah.
You said these have been your teammates for many years.
Yes.
As a person who is building a brand, when you were building early phases of building your brand, how did you know teammate? Like, how did you select teammates? How did you, it's a big deal to be with people for so long and, you know, you keep doing these amazing events. Like, how did you find those folks?
Interestingly, these folks really found me. A lot of folks worked on National Cannabis Festival for free for the first couple of years because we really didn't have any money to our name and we're just kind of piecing it together each year. But what I found most unique and amazing about this core team, and maybe this is not something that people would recommend in the workplace anymore, but when you're working for a startup, sometimes a really defined scope of work just doesn't exist. People need to be like water sometimes to help push a project forward.
Yes.
And that's really been this team. There have been times where, you know, they've seen a hole in our work stream and it's been like, look, I know this is not on my to-do list, but I really care about this. And I want us to succeed as a team. And I actually, of our core team, there's not one person that hasn't sort of done that for me before and for NCF before. And I really value that. So they will always have a home on the NCF team.
That's so fantastic.
For as long as we're able to keep it. Yeah.
It's super, super special, you know, to be able to align. And your team is relatively small.
It is very small. Of course, we expand as we get closer to the festival, as we bring on our larger production team. But I do like to think that the way our attendees behave on site, the way our exhibitors treat each other, the way even our artists are behaving backstage is all because of how they were treated coming in by members of our team who are very professional. They are very calm. They are very tolerant to a reasonable point.
Yes.
And, you know, I have their back through and through because of those things. Yeah.
Great. So as far as cannabis legalization, and DC is a very interesting place in that, because it's not a state, it's not a this, it's that, you know. How does that work in DC as far as cannabis goes?
That is a question that I would have had a different answer for 2 months ago.
Okay.
So DC is not a state, but we do have our own mayor. We have our city council. And unfortunately, we also have congressional budget control. So they have to approve the DC budget, which means they can sort of say how we spend our money.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, because of that congressional budget control and because of something called the Harris Rider, one member of Congress basically slapping a rider, almost like a Post-it note on the budget that says, if DC moves forward with a fully adult use market, they're going to be penalized and have things taken out of their budget. So because of this thing called the Harris Rider, we've been unable to move forward and fully implement an adult use program, but we do have a medical program that in about a month, we should see humming in a very different way. We have a lot of licensed dispensaries opening at the end of this month.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. So it's
Was
exciting.
there a new surge of license applications or just issues of licenses?
Yes. So DC recognized that, you know, through loopholes and creative entrepreneurship, people had found ways to open unregulated cannabis shops.
Yes.
And they've been encouraging people to transition over to the licensed space. So they created this whole transition program.
Wow.
And we're going to see if this great experiment works in a couple of weeks as they see how many of these stores are able to open and come online. So it's a very big moment for the city. This is what we asked for and what we've all been asking for. We've all been asking for opportunities and greater access. But I think, we're all also realizing that with those opportunities and greater access comes some things that might be a little less ideal, more
Yes.
regulation, in some cases
Yep.
more expense, but hopefully more opportunity as well.
Okay. Yes, because I had a conversation in another episode with an accountant, a CPA, and understanding the ins and outs of 280E in the regulated market. So now I have a whole new vantage point of things and planning and so on and so forth. So I'm curious, so how do you feel? Like, do you think, like, what is your feeling about, like, do you know any of the licensees who have transitioned over?
I do know a lot of the licensees, and I'm really proud of them. I know that this is a colossal achievement. I mean, I can't imagine all of the hoops they've had to jump through, the financing they've had to line up, the red tape they've had to cut through, all of the inspections. Like, it makes my head spin the way your head spins when you think about the festival. I'm just like, I could never do this. So I'm really proud of them, and I hope that this works, and I hope that, as a city, we can really get behind this effort of small business owners. I also hope that this works and we can open up access for even more people to transition in. I hope we
Yes.
can prove that it works.
And this is under medical, not adult use.
Right.
Wow.
Which actually brings me back to what we were talking about a second ago.
Yeah.
We are living under a very different administration now,
Yes.
and our medical cannabis program, to a certain degree, exists, at the grace of Congress not messing with city affairs and the will of our city voters.
Right.
Unfortunately, you may have heard that home rule is now under threat in DC. Home rule was something granted to DC in the 1970s. Before that, Congress used to be the manager and administrator of the city. We had sort of ceremonial city positions, but Congress had to vote on city level issues.
I did not know that.
Isn't that crazy? So in the 70s, realizing this didn't make much sense, DC was granted home rule. So we were able to have a mayor and a council that actually had the power to write legislation, vote on legislation, implement legislation, run our city, work with Congress. And here we are today. Now there is some discussion from our new president that he would like to take home rule back, because he says that DC is very dangerous and very dirty and sort of a blight on the reputation of the United States.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing, but for folks who aren't really familiar with the home rule issue, and in this age of government efficiency that we're living in, I would really like to ask all people, Democrat, Republican, wherever you lie on the spectrum, if you really think it makes sense for Congress to be voting on things like off-leash dog laws in Washington, D.C., no parking zones on certain city streets, whether we should have noise ordinances in certain neighborhoods or not. Something tells me that they have some other things that they should probably be focusing on right now. And hopefully this is all just a big act of political theater and will be left alone.
Yes. And wow, I can't imagine Congress voting on poop laws.
I was joking to some local advocates in DC that we should stage a call-in and give them a little taste of what it would be like to be a DC council member for the day. We will call in every single issue to all of our Republican members of Congress. And I think there's a street light out on my street. I got to make a phone call. But I think that would be like a really terrific thing if every DC resident picked up the phone and made a call to the member of Congress and maybe to the White House to be like, are you sure you want to deal with this? Because
yeah, that would be insane. That would be insane. And you would just be in the dark with a lot of poop, in my opinion.
Exactly. But I do think there is some, political artistry at play right now.
Yeah.
I think that DC also has to be really careful to not poke the bear. It's important for us to protect our residents more than it is to take part in like this petty political theater stuff.
That's why your policy work actually comes in very, very handy, because I also, sometimes it's challenging to keep up. It's hard to know where to find information. So the fact that you provide this policy summit during your festival, I think it's huge because honestly, I call people. If I need to know something for sure, I'll put in a call to someone like at NCR or something like that and be like, hey, I don't know this and I don't want to look silly. So can you tell me what's going on? But a lot of folks don't even know what's happening. So it's hard to be shooketh when you don't even know what's going on.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. And I think that's what's so fun about the festival. It's this opportunity at the summit for everybody to kind of help articulate some of these really heavy issues. And then we have the festival where people get to hang out and have sort of a reunion and maybe not work for a few hours. So I love seeing all of our cannabis advocates friends at NCF, like in their element and then just hanging out.
So the festival usually happens during 420 weekend. And this year it's going to be further in the year.
Yeah.
Any particular reason why?
Well, more big news out of DC is that there's going to be big construction at RFK Stadium, which is where the festival takes place.
Yes.
So we just had to make sure that we had access to the full property, and that meant pushing back a couple of months. I think to folks who love warm weather, this is great news. When you're doing an event in April, it's like, is it going to be 50 degrees or 75? Is it going to be gray and rainy or clear and sunny?
Yeah.
Gale force winds, or will it be a soft breeze? In the summer, of course, it's like, is it going to be hot like the surface of the sun? We have a lot of plans in place to mitigate the heat, a lot of cooling stations, a lot of shade tents, a lot of spaces. So I am becoming a cooling expert.
And we are out in the sun. Mm-hmm. So you might have to have those little beach area for people to pull out a beach chair and just get some tans.
I was joking to my team. I was like, I think we should have like a splash pad. And they were like, are you sure you want to be encouraging people to strip down at the festival?
And I was like, slip and slide.
I hadn't thought of that. But if it's genuinely hot outside and you're celebrating, you may end up taking off layers that no one's quite ready for you to take off. So
yes.
I mean, to each their own, but we've never done that before. So who knows? Maybe there will be a splash pad.
Have you announced your performers for this year?
We have not. The plan is to announce those in April. It's been a little confusing for me to have the festival in July. It's March right now. So normally this time of year, we are deep in the thick of it.
Right.
So I find myself waking up like 2 or 3 mornings a week in like this confused panic. We're like going to like look at our team numbers and be like, we're not where we're supposed to be. And then being like, oh,
we got 3 more months.
Festivals in 5 months. Yeah. Like we are good. Stay calm, Caroline. So I think my whole team has been experiencing a little bit of calendar disorientation over the past.
I understand that completely. That makes total sense. Because especially if you're used to doing it that time, that week.
My body is used to hitting a certain peak of stress at a certain time of the year. So I'm like, okay, I need to get like another 2 to 3 months out of myself.
Okay, cool. And so are you doing the policy summit alongside this year?
So because we're pushing the festival back to July, we didn't want to leave our folks here in the region with nothing to do. And we also wanted to support the 420 Unity Week that the advocacy groups are putting on in DC. So we will be having 420 Week from 420 to 428.
Okay.
There are some awesome programs on the calendar, from an oral storytelling of the war on drugs to the policy summit, of course. We have some performing arts programs, and we also will have some more community events. So we'll be releasing that information soon. We're very excited about it. And yeah, the policy summit will be on April the 28th, which will have all of the advocates in town as they prepare for their lobby days that week.
That's right. I might actually try and come down this year, because normally Gia would go down, and I'm like, okay, you go take care of all that stuff down there, and I'll hang out up here. So I might go down this year.
One of the reasons this is selfish, but one of the reasons I really want people that I know to come down, this will be the first time I get to actually participate in 420 Week in full. Usually 420 Week plays out like this. Monday, show up at venue from 7 to 7:15. welcome crowd, run home or run to site to work for 7 more hours. So 420 week is this weird, like little blur of introductions, but I don't get to see the whole summit. I don't
Right.
get to attend all of the events. So I'm going to soak it fully in this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're trying to bribe me.
I
Get to hang
am.
out
Like,
time
we'll actually
too.
get to hang out. I will have time to be a real human and greet my friends and all of our guests and be part of the festivities.
I love that. I love that. So during the year, because the festival is so huge, and with the policy summit and 420 week, do you work on, because I can't imagine what that must be like with insurances and music contracts and all the logistics. During the year, are you working on any other projects?
Yes. So, especially pre pandemic, we had a lot more projects. A lot of our clients are starting to come back online now, but we have some great projects that we work on in the rest of the year. NCF is a 10 to 11 month planning process. So, there's always something happening, but
Yeah.
we love working on other special interest issues and helping other groups articulate their mission to their audience. We had a really terrific time with Mary Jane Oatman on her Indigenous Cannabis Policy Summit this year. It's our third year producing it, and it's been incredible to see what she and her co-founder Rob Perro have accomplished in 3 years. So I know for my team, as much as we love, the creative process around our baby, which is NCF,
Right.
it's so fun to be a visitor in somebody else's world and
Yes.
to help make their vision happen. And I think I call out MJ's program because she's an amazing woman,
She is.
but also because I learned so much. Like personally, I have learned so much about Indigenous communities and the specific cannabis policy issues that impact them over the years.
Yes.
And, I can definitely say that because of MJ and ICIA, I can be a passionate junior advocate on those issues now. So still so much to learn, but
Oh, Mary. I
fun.
gotta call her. Yes. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I love that. Okay, cool. So NCF massive, other projects, but you said something because I know NCF is obviously your largest event, but you do all these different things. Do you consider yourself an event producer? Do you consider yourself more because you write? So are you on the PR side? Like, are you just like amazingly everything? Like, what would you call yourself?
I guess I kind of think of myself as a storyteller.
Okay.
And, with NCF, we're trying to share the stories of our community. That's what gets people to show up when they feel like they know who they're showing up to see. With MJ, we've been helping her tell the story of all of these incredible tribes and their struggles and their successes. And I think ultimately one day when I put my work down and switch gears, I'd love to end up being a writer. And maybe by then I'll have enough stories about our community to write an epic cannabis fiction novel.
Oh my gosh. Please be starting now because I would love that. So my next question is like NCF, the Policy Summit. What surprising insights have you gained from producing these events?
I will say, I don't know if this is unique to National Cannabis Festival because it bridges music and cannabis. Like, producing a music festival is hard enough. Then throw cannabis into the mix and you're just like, why did I do this? I think the thing that has surprised me is that there have been no 2 years that are the same. Every year has presented its own unique challenge, and every year we've had to find different ways to work around those challenges. So I
Okay.
think that is something that now, 10 years in, it doesn't scare me as much. I used to be really scared when we would have these big things happening that seemed like roadblocks.
Yeah.
Now I just know that I need to have a little extra energy on reserve each year. It's almost like having a budget line item for like miscellaneous or the unexpected. I just know every year that I need to have a chunk of my time ready for whatever the year's theme of like exciting, time consuming work is going to be. So yeah, every year we have sort of a different thing that we have to work around.
Okay. And that keeps you on your toes, you know.
It really does. It keeps us beyond on our toes. I wouldn't mind being a little more flat on the ground, to be quite honest. But, we love what we're doing. We know that there's a reason that we're doing it still.
Yeah.
And honestly, now more than ever, it feels like we need to have programs like NCF and like these
100%.
big conferences that bring us together. And doing this in DC, a mile down the road from Congress, I'm like, we really need to do this right now.
100%. And I actually was a little excited selfishly that it was later in the year because there's so many things happening up here in New York. I love that the policy summit is the week after because there's always so many things happening and I want to go down or I want to do stuff or I want to do nothing, so I'm like, okay, July is great. My birthday's in July. I'm going to go down.
Same.
When is yours?
I'm July 28th.
I'm July 25th.
We can have a party at the festival. It'll be great.
Have a party.
Yes.
It'll be Leo season. So, I would love that. But yeah, I'll be there this year and I'm excited. So I'm coming down. All right. So as we start to look towards the future, what trends or movements in cannabis policy are you excited about? I know it's a weird question to ask where we are, but is there anything that you have a hopeful outcome?
I have a lot of hope. I really do. I am most excited about how our advocacy groups are rethinking and re-strategizing around their approach to legalization.
Yes.
I think that with this new administration, we have an opportunity to really think about what is most important.
Okay.
I know that over the years, I've found that our community has been splintered a little bit as, we've gone deep down the road of licensing in this state versus that state, and social equity operators are getting their fair share versus multi-state operator. So there's been a lot of this versus that.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that we have the chance to kind of zoom out a little bit and think about what the bigger issues are that impact all of us and to really protect ourselves and our interests going forward.
Yeah. So, that would be amazing.
Could be a byproduct, but maybe I'm wrong about that, but I hope I'm right.
I hope you are too, Mama. I really do. So as cannabis becomes more mainstream, what role do you see for festivals and public events in shaping public opinion? Because I already know for me, but I'm curious for you, for the larger, as NCF keeps going further.
It's a really exciting question. I've actually been working with Queen Adesui, who used to be with Drug Policy Alliance and is now with an organization called Reframe Health and Justice. And she and I have been working on the cannabis retail live event legislation in this region to try and ensure that it can become a sustainable revenue stream for small business owners in our region.
Yes.
So, which is sort of two things. So first, I think if we can make cannabis present at live events in safe, responsible ways, that's just another way that people will see it and see it alongside things like beer and wine and maybe be more accepting of it. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that municipalities are introducing regulatory models for live events that offer different levels of engagement. Because if you don't know too much about cannabis and you go to an event and you're suddenly surrounded by, let's say, a lot of smoke and you didn't want that to happen, your appreciation of the plant is just not going to be there.
100%.
So an event like NCF, it's called the National Cannabis Festival. I think people expect there to be cannabis there. Maybe that could be Model A, which is more of an open model. But at an event that's not necessarily a cannabis event, perhaps there should be a cordoned off area where people can consume inhalable products, purchase their products, and in that way introduce it to the festival atmosphere, but not force it on people who aren't quite ready for it. So
I agree with you 100%, because I have friends who don't consume, and I still want to hang out with them, but maybe there's an area for you to go over there.
right.
And this, or smoking areas, like with the way you do at NCF with your food court area. I think that there should be like a little dispensary area over there too, where
Yeah.
someone can go. That would be an amazing model,
Yeah.
where it's legal or whatever the case may be. Um, I also have another question about medical, but I want to jump. I don't want to jump around too much, because in New York we have a medical program, and we've probably got maybe 110,000 patients in it right now. I am curious, as far as DC, do you know how many medical patients you have in your state or in DC proper?
I would say it's not very many. I believe it is between, I'm going to give kind of a wide range here, so don't laugh, but I
Okay.
think you're looking at between like 3 and 7,000, which is a very small number. But you have to remember that DC is, well, until recently, was the home of a big chunk of the federal workforce.
Yes.
And that has
Very
been
true.
one of the challenges for DC's medical program, is that, there are a lot of folks here that can't put their name down on an application for cannabis.
Yes. And the
So
legacy market was so strong, or
the
is.
legacy market was strong and didn't have those requirements, so it really thrived. More power to those entrepreneurs. I understand that the opportunity was there and that it was there for the taking. And yeah, we're definitely going to be an exciting month as we see how this transition.
I'm gonna check in with you to see how that rolls out. So shifting again, what, both as women in the industry, what would you tell someone who wants to newly come into the space? What advice would you give a new woman entering cannabis?
I would advise new folks who are entering cannabis to find opportunities to get paid to learn. And what I mean by that is, and I know that this is probably not what people want to hear, but if you want to open a dispensary, maybe spend 6 months learning about the front end, being a bud tender, and get paid to do that. It's the most valuable kind of experience you can have. And I think there's so many of us in this little group that have known each other for about 10 years now. And I think that we all know at this point that nothing in this industry is as it seems until you're in it. So,
Woo!
Yeah.
I agree with that so much, because here in New York, bartenders are getting spoiled. And I wish I had met you 10 years ago when it was because entrepreneurship has its challenges, and it would be great to get paid while you learn. And in essence, that's, go work for a processor if you want to be a processor. Go work for a cultivator if you want to be a cultivator. So you can get paid while you learn. That's great. Thank you.
I get that that's easier said than done, because I get that a lot, if you are an executive, then being a bud tender for 6 months, it's like, how am I going to pay my bill?
Of course.
But I almost consider that sort of like an investment in, this future thing you want to build. So I wish I had some like really super inspiring thing to say that might seem really pragmatic and boring, but take every opportunity you can to get paid to learn. How about that?
100%. I love that. And then what is where would you like NCF to go? Like next year, the year of going down, like what is your vision long term for NCF?
I would like NCF to go where it is needed. We are here because DC wants us here and needs us here. That may not always be true. I'd love it to be. But I think that there are places that need programs like NCF. There are groups of advocates who need to have their voices amplified. So, I could see NCF popping up in another country one day. I could also see NCF, signing off with like a beautiful story that was well told by a close knit group of work friends. So I think, there are a lot of possibilities out there, but I would love to see NCF go where it's needed.
I love that because you do such great work. Okay, you ready for our lightning round?
Ready.
Favorite book?
Favorite book, White Teeth by Zadie Smith.
Okay, I have to write that one down. Never heard of that one. If you could have dinner with a historical figure, who would it be and why?
I'm not doing lightning so well right now. Sorry about that.
It's okay. No, well, that's a thought. That's a thought.
Okay. Dinner with a historical figure and why? Can I come back to that one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I kind of know what this one is, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is one law or policy that you would change overnight if you could?
Oh, well, I would love to see cannabis legalized at the federal level and all cannabis prisoners released.
Yes, I kind of knew that, but that's a good one. What is your go-to method for unwinding after a stressful day?
Unwinding after a stressful day, I will either work out and I will definitely smoke a joint.
Yes. Okay. And what is one unexpected skill that you think all entrepreneurs should have?
Unexpected skill, I'll go back to persuasive writing. I think if you know how to write a letter that can persuade someone to do what you're asking for, you're going to be in good shape.
That's a big deal. And what is the last show you binge watched?
The last show I binge watched was Perfect Couple.
Oh, that was good.
So I had the opening sequence stuck in my head, including the song, and I can't lie, I kind of want to do the dance, but I'm not going to do the dance. I kind of want to do the dance.
That was good. Caroline, thank you. This is so much fun. I really appreciate it. When we click off, I'm going to ask you to hang back with me. Tell everybody, when is NCF? When is the policy? Give us a little calendar rundown as we end.
All right. You can join us in DC for 420 Week, which runs from April 20th to the 28th. That is free events around the DC area. All kinds of events, poetry readings, performances, panel discussions, and it's capped by our policy summit, which is on the 28th. You'll be hearing more about that online in about 2 weeks. Then the festival is on July 18th and 19th this year. So 2 full days of music with headline talent, education sessions, contests, endless food, so many fun things to drink. And I bring that up because we're having a 0 proof bar this year that I'm really excited about. Yep.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes. So definitely subscribe to all things National Cannabis Festival. You can do that on our website, which is nationalcannabisfestival.com. And you will get updates as all of these programs get announced. But if you can, definitely come see us in July.
Thank you, Caroline. And I will be in DC for Summit this week for sure.
That makes me so happy. This is
absolutely. All right, hang back. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of CannaDiva Conversations. Real talk and inspiring stories from women who are shaping the future of plant medicine. Brought to you by the CannaDiva, a community of women supporting women at every stage of their cannabis journey. I'm your host, Tanya Osborne. A big thank you to our guests this week, Caroline Phillips, founder of the National Cannabis Festival. Don't forget, the National Cannabis Festival is coming up soon, and you do not want to miss it. Next week, we're talking to Miss Beatrice Stein, or Miss B as I call her, founder of Hospitality Pathways. So make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. If you want to keep the conversation going, join us in the CannaDiva Collective, our inclusive, safe virtual space where women can connect, grow, and bring some CannaDiva joy into their lives. Inside the collective, it's not just about networking, it's about building real, authentic connections. From virtual co-working sessions, community events like Silent Book Club, Clean Your Bong parties, to our morning meditations, accountability groups, and morning buzzes. There is a space for every diva to shine. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you next week. Stay lifted, divas.